Good day everyone and welcome to Anatomy Simplified. Today we'll be tackling the muscles of mastication and we will be looking at their origins, insertions, and then also the nerve supply and action. So let's start. Okay, so to explain most of the stuff regarding the mandible and masticatory muscles, I have come up with this genius mnemonic of mine, namely tepro-limit. So we know that the mandible is the only functional bone or the only mobile bone in the maxillofacial complex, and it does that by work of various muscles that attaches onto the mandible to allow for a range of movements to occur. These movements are essential to make speech possible and to make eating possible. So in the normal anatomical position, the mandible is in elevation, is in elevated mode. So in order for the mandible to become functional, it's going to have to go through depression, no? And there's a limit for the depression because we've got the mandible hooking into the rest of the skull at the site of the temporomandibular joint. So we say tepro for depressed. We take the first four letters and we say limit. Limit is one of those words that look like it should have a double M, but in actual fact it doesn't. But in any case, I digress. So limit means, in this context, L would be for the lateral pterygoid, M for the medial pterygoid, another M for the masseter, and then T for the temporalis. Tepro or TPR would give us the mnemonic for the range of movements that's going to occur. So D, depression, has a negative connotation, so we allot that to one muscle only. So in this case, it would be for the lateral pterygoid. E has a positive connotation, elevation, has a positive connotation, so we allot three letters to it. So all the muscles that is going to allow for elevation would then be the medial pterygoid, the masseter, and the temporalis. Or negative connotation for retraction, so we allot one muscle to it again. We say that the temporalis is going to allow for retraction, and protraction, the word itself, has a positive connotation, and so we say that we allot now again three muscles to that. So there we have it. An interesting fact, or something that you should know by now, is that the mandible, the muscles of mastication, and the trigeminal nerve all are derived from the first brachial arch. And so the trigeminal nerve is going to supply the muscles of mastication. So specifically because these muscles attaches to the mandible, the mandibular division of the trigeminal nerve is going to be of interest to us. So we know that the mandible, the muscles of the mastication, and the trigeminal is derived from the first brachial arch. Anyway, so now we have to look or think about the origins and the insertions. We now know what the nerve supply is. So the origin for the temporalis, I'm going to start at the back of limit. So for the temporalis, we say that the temporal fossa is going to be the origin. So the temporal fossa is a double line that spans on the neurocranium, on the external surface of the neurocranium, and it includes now the sphenoid bone, the temporal bone, the frontal bone, and the parietal bone. So that's the origin. The insertion is going to be this fan-like muscle is going to form a singular tendon that is going to go via the infratemporal fossa onto the coronoid process, and there it's going to act. So imagine if the muscle is attaching from the temporal fossa to the masseter and the muscle fibers shorten, what movement is going to happen at the site of the mandible itself. You get it? Okay, so now we start with the middle and the medial. And there's another way to remember this. So we've got the mandible, and we've got on each side of the mandibular angle, we're going to have a muscle. So on the external surface, we're going to have the mesenteric muscle attaching from the zygomatic process onto the mandibular angle and parts of the body of the mandible. And then on the medial aspect of the mandible itself, we're going to have this medial pterygoid muscle, And the medial pterygoid muscles origins are going to come from the infratemporal crest as well as the medial aspect of the lateral pterygoid plate. So there's a lot of M's over here, so it's like we can deduce, or we can use the letters M. The peaks in the letters M can give us an indication that these muscles are going to have a superficial and a deep head. So both the masseter and the medial pterygoid muscles are going to have superficial and deep it's going to have superficial and deep parts now and for origins, and then it's going to insert onto specific structures. Are you with me? Okay, that's perfect. So for the masseter, it's going to be from the zygomaticus. The two heads, now the superficial and the deep, is both going to come from the site of the zygomatic arch, and it's going to attach onto the angle, whereas the deep is going to go from the infratemporal crest and the medial surface of the lateral pterygoid plate, and it's going to attach onto the mandible close to the angle on the medial side. Then now we're going to cover the lateral pterygoid muscle. So the lateral pterygoid muscle, similar to the medial pterygoid muscle, is going to attach onto the lateral pterygoid plate. So if you look at the sphenoid bone on the internal surface, there is going to be two plates. The medial pterygoid plate does not relate to the muscle attachment sites or the muscles of mastication attachment site. Those ones are more related to the pharynx, the structures of the pharynx. But for the lateral pterygoid plate itself, it's going to be the origin for the medial pterygoid muscle as well as the lateral pterygoid muscle. So the medial pterygoid muscle is going to attach to the medial aspect of the lateral pterygoid plate, while the lateral pterygoid muscle is going to attach to the lateral aspect of the lateral pterygoid plate. And to remember the heads of the lateral pterygoid, we look at the letter L. So we see that for the L, there's a superior part to the letter L and an inferior part. So we know that for the lateral pterygoid muscle, there's going to be a superior and an inferior head. Those ones are going to attach onto the pterygoid fovea. So that is a triangular type structure that is found on the condyle, on the neck of the condyle of the mandible itself, and it's also going to attach onto the start of the temporomandibular joint itself. So origin is going to be the lateral plate of the lateral pterygoid muscle, and then the insertion is going to be the pterygoid fovea as well as the start of the temporomandibular joint. So now you would ask, what about grinding motions? So there's a range of motions where the mandible glides across from the maxilla, because the maxilla is mobile. The mandible is, the maxilla is stationary, static, and the mandible moves across the maxillar teeth to make grinding possible. So without these lateral rotation of the mandible, we won't be able to grind food down into, a bolus. And this is made possible by the lateral and medial pterygoid muscles that act antagonistically to achieve this. So if the lateral pterygoid on the right is going to contract, then it means the lateral pterygoid on the left should not contract to make that grinding motion possible. So now we know the range of motions that the mandible can allow for when the muscles act on it, and we know that the nerve supply is the mandibular division of the trigeminal nerve, and we know the osteology, the structures to which the mandible or the muscles attached to other than the sites on the mandible itself. So we know that the sphenoid is a big role player, because the sphenoid is going to be where we have the attachment sites for the pterygoid muscles, so both the medial and lateral pterygoid muscles attaching to either side of the lateral pterygoid plate specifically. And we know that the temporalis is going to be a site, or the neurocranium, the external surface, is going to be the attachment site of this beautiful fan structure called the temporalis, which is going to attach onto the coronoid process that looks like the crown of the mandible. And yeah, by now you should also know that the muscle with the greatest bite force in the body actually is the masseter. It creates the highest bite force compared to its size. But there you have it. We've covered all the muscles of mastication, all information relevant to you. I hope that you enjoyed this video.